Hi Year 3, it's Mrs Silverthorne here. Welcome back to a new term. We're back with some maths. Now our maths this unit is going to be working on mass and capacity. Now I'll explain a little bit more about those in just a minute, but just to get us warmed up, I thought I'd go a little bit easy on our first day back. I would like you to have a go at partitioning these numbers into hundreds, tens and ones, please. So pause the video here and see if you can give it a go. Okay, have a little look at our partitioning answers there. Hopefully that was super quick and super easy for you and just getting that brain mathematically switched back on again. Let's jump into our main maths for today. Okay, so our main maths today is actually about measuring mass. Now, you might already know what mass is, but I'm going to explain it again just in case there's anyone out there who goes, well, actually, Mrs. Silverthorne, what is mass? Mass is the amount of matter an object has. Now, I say that and it sounds a little bit strange, but realistically, what it is how much something weighs. And throughout this unit, we'll be focusing on measuring in grams and measuring in kilograms. So those will be the main units that we will be working with. And so throughout today, everything that you encounter will be in either grams or it will be in kilograms. So hopefully that just gives you an idea. So if someone says, what is mass? You can say it's how much something weighs. If you want to go with the really technical, mass is the amount of matter an object has, you're welcome to impress people by doing that too. Okay, so let's have a little look. Let's have a look at this scale. We've got a bag of sugar on the scale. So when we're looking at a scale, how do we know how much it weighs? So just pause the video for a minute and just have a think. Have a little look at the scale. What tells you on that scale how much the sugar weighs? Okay, so when we're thinking about it, you've probably already spotted this glaring red arrow pointing at a number and it's got a G next to it. So very, very quickly, you've probably picked up that this amount of sugar weighs 500 grams. Okay, so that's quite easy, isn't it? If the arrow is pointing at it and it tells you the number there really nice and clearly, then it's really easy to tell how much that would weigh. So usually the arrow is there to help us, but one of the things we want to be thinking about is actually, what if the arrow was not pointing at a number specifically? What about if it's pointing at a different area? Okay, so here we've got that same bag of sugar again. I'm going to write down its mass underneath, mass or weight. Whichever one of those words you use will be absolutely fine. If you're able to use mass, that's great because then later on, we won't be confused as to what it means. I'm going to write 500 grams here. You'll notice I put the G here to show the unit I'm measuring in. Because if I just said 500, really that could be 500 anything. That could be 500 stinky socks worth of sugar. It could be 500, or what could it be? 500 gallons of water. It could be 500 teddy bears. If you don't put the unit there, it's really hard to know what it is. So G is usually what we would use for grams and particularly for weight. Obviously, when I said 500 gallons of water, that's to do with liquid, so that's something that's different. But in this case, when we're looking at mass, we're looking at the weight of something, the G will usually mean grams, okay? It would be really strange if you went to the shop and said, can I have 500 stinky socks worth of sugar? And I think the people in the shop would probably think, I wonder how I can work that out. But when we look at this one here, if we look at these two scales next to each other, have a think about what's the same and what is different. So you can see that really the numbers on the scales are in the same places, aren't they? But when we look at where the arrow is pointing this time, it's actually pointing between 900 and 800. It's pointing at this little dash here, okay? Now, these little dashes, they have a special name as well, and they are called intervals. I'm just going to type that word here as well, just so that intervals, just so that then it's really, really clear the word that I mean, okay? Now, when it gets to this point, we actually don't get told it weighs this. We actually need to do a little bit of working out here. So when we look at a scale like this, okay, as you can see, the numbers fit on it quite nicely. But if you also had to put in the amount in between, say, 100 and 200 grams, or for where we're looking, between 900 and 800 grams, the scale becomes a bit crowded and sometimes those numbers just won't fit on. And so what happens is the scales will have intervals on and they will show different weights that are not 100 grams. So if you notice, it goes 100, 200, 300, 400. It's going up in 100s at the moment. But not everything will weigh 100, 200, or 300 grams. Sometimes they will weigh something in between, which is what we've got with this bag of flour. So what can I tell from this? So I can tell, because of where the arrow is pointing, I can tell that it's more than 800 grams. I can tell that it's less than 900 grams. And in fact, if I have a look here, this interval is directly in between 800 and 900. So what I need to be thinking about is what is the number that is in between, say, 0 and 100, or 100 and 200. And what I can be able to work out is actually between 0 and 100, what is exactly in the middle? Well, that's 50, isn't it? So if each of these little intervals is worth 50, what might this be? What could my answer be here? What could be the mass of this flour? Okay, so what I can be thinking of then, what is the interval that could be directly in the middle between 800 and 900? I know the difference between 800 and 900 is 100, but that can't be the difference. So the difference has to be half of that amount. So it needs to be half of 100. So here I've got my 800, half of 100 then is 50. So I can work out that this is then 850 grams. There we go. Let's have a look at something else. When we looked at working these out, the word interval came up quite a lot. So the word interval is quite important when we're thinking about measuring, because sometimes what you might find is that, like I said, the number that we want to measure is not always there. And so we need to be able to work it out. So one of the things that we'll be thinking about is actually, how do we work that out? So let's move on to the next one, for example. So let's have a go at these ones together. So I've got two different scales here, and I want to be able to work out the weight of the pasta and the rice. And I can see that here, the pasta, the arrow is pointing at an interval between 100 and 200. And over here, it's pointing at an interval for the rice between 200 and 300. Okay, so at the moment, I need to be able to work out what that is. Okay, so similarly as it was before, between 100 and 200, the interval is right in the middle. So the interval right in the middle tells me that between 100 and 200, there is something in the middle. So a lot of the time, it's really easy, actually, if you go to the 0 at the top where there's no weight, and then go to 100, and then you need to be thinking, well, actually, it's halfway between 0 and 100. So again, I know that half of 100 is 50. So here, this little interval here would be 50. Then I would jump to 100, and then here, I've got 150 grams. There we go, just like that. Oh, I should have written it in my special box, shouldn't I? So that one tells me that one there. So you need to be thinking about what you're able to tell when it comes to these measuring. So for example, here, the rice, the arrow is pointing between the 200 and the 300. So I can tell it's less than 300, but I can tell it's more than 200. And again, I'm going to go to my 0. I'm going to think, oh, I've got 0 and then I've got 100. So I've got a 100 gram difference there, and then an interval right in the middle. So I know that half of 100 will tell me what that interval is. So I know that half of 100 is 50. This is where we worked on counting up in 50s as a starter a couple of weeks ago. This is where counting up in 50s is really useful. So that tells me here that the interval here is going to be 50 something, okay? So 200 and add on that 50 there, so 250. So I can put that one down here. So counting up in 5s and counting up in 50s, they are related, and it is really, really useful, particularly for this type of work. Okay, so let's have a little look at this one now. So you might have noticed straight away, we are not working in just grams this time. So you might have thought, oh, kg, what's kg? Hopefully you'll remember from the beginning that kg stands for kilograms. Let's write this one down at the top as well. Kilograms. Oh, let's make it so we can read it. We'll put the white background on, make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so we're dealing with kilograms this time. So let's have a little look. Where is the arrow? Oh, this is great. The arrow is actually pointing directly at a number. Strangely, though, it's right over the top of the number, so it's hard to work out. So let's see how we're counting round in kilograms this time. I wonder if you can spot it. So I've got 0, 2, 4, 6. Oh, now that really helps me now, because what I've noticed is I seem to be counting in 2 kilogram increments. So if I'm counting in 2 kilogram increments, even if my arrow is over the top of this number, I can work that out quite easily. So did you get it? I'm going to go 0, 2, 4, 6. That's right, 8. I've landed on 8. I can also tell it's 8 because if I counted on another 2 kilograms from 8, I would indeed land on 10 kilograms. What about this one? Have a little look. Still counting round in 2 kilogram increments again. But if you notice here, straight away, the arrow is not pointing at one of those increments with a number on it. So we need to be able to work out what it is. So let's find out what we know. Well, for where the arrow is, I can see the arrow is past 14 kilograms. So it's more than 14 kilograms, but it's less than 16. It hasn't gotten to the 16 kilogram mark yet. So I'm thinking, okay, if I'm counting up in 2s each time, and these little intervals are halfway between, what is halfway between 2 and 0? Did you get it? It's 1 kilogram. So for each interval, if it's 1 kilogram, I can be thinking, oh, okay, so I've got 2 kilograms, but I know that this one here is 1 kilogram. 4 kilograms here, but I know that this one here in the middle there, it's going to be 3. It's almost like you're counting in ones this time because we're going 1, 2, 3, 4. What would this one then be? You got it, it will be 5. So let's go around to where our arrow is and let's have a look. So 12, or what would be the next kilogram between there? That would be a 13. Then we've got a 14, which means that this one that the arrow is pointing at would then be 15 kilograms. There we go. Okay, what about this one? Now, this one, you may notice, has actually got more than 1 increment in between each of the numbers. Now, this is where we need to be a little bit careful. So, what we need to be thinking about is this. We're dealing with kilograms again. And when we're dealing with kilograms, it's really useful to be thinking, actually, what am I counting up in to begin with? So what numbers can I see? So I can see 5 kilograms, 10 kilograms, 15 kilograms. I can tell that I'm counting up in 5 kilogram increments. So that is on both of these scales, okay? Let's look at how many increments I've got in between them. So I go from 0 to 5 and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to count this last one, 5. There's 5 between 0 and 5. So if there's 5 kilograms, that means that each of these increments is worth 1 each. So let's double check to make sure that works. I'm going to count up in kilograms, counting these little increments here. Let's see if this works. 1 kilogram, 2 kilograms, 3 kilograms, 4 kilograms, 5 kilograms. So I know that each of these little tiny increments is worth 1 kilogram. So let's go around to where our arrow is. Oh, we are really lucky with this one. The arrow is pointing directly at a number. I know it's counting up in 5 kilograms. I'd already worked that out. So I know that this suitcase here, suitcase, or is it a backpack? It might be a backpack, weighs 35 kilograms. That is a heavy backpack. I wonder where this person is going to have such a heavy backpack. But what about this one? So the one with the green backpack, let's have a look. It's not pointing directly at a number again, is it? So this is where we need to use our knowledge of what we've just worked out to help us. So straight away, I can count round in my 5. So I can go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. But the arrow is between the 25 and 30 kilogram increments. So I need to be really careful to choose a number that is in between. But I'd also already worked out that each of these increments is only worth 1 kilogram. So what I can do is to go to my 25 kilograms and then keep counting on until I get to the interval the arrow is pointing at. So for example, if I wanted to measure one that was pointing here, I could do this. I could think, okay, 5, 10, 15, but then I want to start to count in 1 kilogram. So 15, 16, 17 kilograms. So this arrow, this purple arrow, would be 17 kilograms. There we go. Let's get rid of this one. And then let's try it out with our red one. So I've counted round in 5. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Now I'm going to continue counting in 1 kilograms. So 25 kilograms, 26 kilograms, 27 kilograms. There we go. Another very heavy backpack. There we go. Okay. Another way you can do this is to think about a number line when we're working out what each interval is worth. So we're looking at this barrel here. So with this barrel, one of the things I will need to be looking out for is the intervals, okay? And I'm thinking about where my arrow is pointing, okay? Now the darker interval will tell me what the number is. So it may look like it's pointing at the 60 here, but it's not. It's pointing at this little interval here. The dark bold ones are usually the ones that have a number to go with them. So for example, at the moment, it is past 60 kilograms, but it's not quite on 70 kilograms. Now, like we had before, let's count how many intervals we've got here to get to 10 kilograms, the first number that we can see here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the bold one, 5 intervals to get to 10 kilograms. The last time, each of these intervals was worth 1. Does that work this time though? Let's try it. So 0 kilograms, 1 kilogram, 2 kilograms, 3 kilograms, 4 kilograms, 5 kilograms. Does that work? No, it doesn't, because the scale tells me that this kilogram here, this interval here is 10. So I need to be thinking then, right, I've got 5 jumps to be able to get to 10 kilograms. So we've already established that counting in 1 kilograms wasn't working. So what else could I count in? Well, you can use your knowledge of, well, there's 5 intervals and I'm getting to the number 10, and I can use my times table knowledge to know, well, actually, that could be jumps of 2. So let's try it. So 1 jump or 1 interval of 2 kilograms, another jump here of 2 kilograms, that's 4, that's this one. Another one to take it to 6. Yeah. Another one to take it to 8, that's this one, and then one more to make it to 10. So each of these jumps, each of these intervals is plus 2 kilograms. So when we're looking at this particular scale, we need to be careful when we're counting up. So this time, instead of going to the 60 kilogram bold interval here and counting on in 1 kilograms from there, we're actually going to be counting on in 2s. So for example, I'm going to go, oh, here's 60. But I want to count on not in 1s, I want to count on in 2s. So this here, it actually is pointing at this one here, is 62 kilograms. There we go. So let's have a look at another one. If I had another arrow pointing just here, I could go round to 20. So 10, 20 is counting up in 10s this time. But now I need to start counting in 2s until I get to my purple arrow. So I go 20, 22, 24, and 26. So this purple arrow would be pointing at 26. Okay, let's move on. Your silver task today is to work out what the mass of each of these items are. So you'll need to look at each of the scale. Some of them, the arrow will be pointing directly at a number. For example, this yummy looking cupcake, the arrow is pointing right at a number. So that one is easy to tell. Others of them, like this Easter egg here, I think, the arrow is actually pointing between numbers. So you will need to work out what the difference is between them, okay? Pause the video here and give it a go. Okay, have a little look. There we go. So our answers are there. I hope you guys remembered to pop in your kilograms and grams so you're writing down the unit that we're working in. Otherwise, I might be thinking the cupcake is worth 48 stinky socks instead of 48 grams. But pause the video here, tick off the ones that you got correct and put a dot next to the ones that you didn't. If you didn't, please don't worry. This is how we learn. If you're ready for your gold task, let's give it a go. Okay, so for your goal task this time, I want you to look at the intervals on this scale. So have a little look. We start at 0. We've got some big bold intervals here. Each seems to be going up in 100s. But then what is each of these little intervals in between worth? Pause the video here and see if you can work out what the intervals are worth and then what amount the arrow is pointing to. Okay, so did you get it? Each of these little intervals is actually worth 10 grams. And then when you look at where the arrow is pointing, it's pointing at 260 grams. If you're ready for the next challenge, let's move on to platinum. Okay, so look at the potatoes on the scale. Who do you agree with here? And can you explain why? So Amir says the potatoes weigh 13 kilograms. Jack says, we don't know how much the potatoes weigh because the number is hidden. Rosie says, the potatoes weigh more than half of 10 kilograms. Pause the video here, have a look at the scale, think about who you agree with, and can you explain why you agree with that person? Okay, let's have a little look at the answers. So when we look at this scale here, we can see that actually Amir is wrong because the arrow on the scale is pointing at an interval before the 10 kilogram mark. So the potatoes can't weigh more than 10 kilograms because the arrow is not past the 10 kilograms. Jack is also wrong because there is a number on the scale. There might not be any other numbers, but there is a 10. And that means that we can begin to start to work out what it is from knowing what this number is worth. Rosie is the person that we would agree with more because what we can find is that actually if we know where the 10 is, we can work out where the 5 would be. So if this is 10, let's work our way backwards. Okay, so 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Yep, so the 5 would be here. And then the arrow is already past that 5. And we know that 5 is half of 10. And so that means that actually Rosie is correct and the potatoes do weigh more than half of 10 kilograms because they actually weigh 7. How did you get on? I hope you guys have had a really, really good first day of maths back today. And I hope you guys are enjoying getting to do some weighing and things. And I'll be back with more maths tomorrow. Take care.